You may think your hotel is already green, but are you green enough for today's eco-conscious traveler? Welcome to the Sustainable Hospitality Podcast, your destination to learn from hospitality professionals on the value and opportunities sustainability will bring to your organization. It will put more heads in beds and lower costs at the same time. We are your hosts and sustainable hospitality experts, Kathy McGuire and Amy Walls.
I'm your host, Kathy McGuire. In this episode, we talk with Dr. John Buschman, Associate Professor at Florida International University's Chaplin School of Hospitality and Tourism Management. We discuss the huge opportunities for food recovery and donation. Enjoy the episode. Welcome, everyone. I'm very pleased to introduce to you Dr. John Buschman. He is a lecturer and postdoctoral associate at Florida International University here in South Florida, and he's also on the board of directors of the Florida Food Policy Council. Welcome, John.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for the invite. I have stepped down from that board, but I did help in the founding of that organization and was on the board for a few years.
Oh, good. Okay, wonderful. So what we want to talk about today is recovering food from events and getting it to the people who really need it, donating it. And I was thinking about, as an example, you could talk about the South Beach Food and Wine Festival. It's very large. And so give us an idea of what's that like. And I know you've been working in this field of recovery for at least 25 years. So you definitely have the expertise. So I'm looking forward to hearing about it.
Yeah, sure. And matter of fact, it's interesting. Just before this call, I was speaking with one of the organizers of the festival, and we're going over some changes this year, as you can imagine. We shifted the dates from February to May to be able to have the festival this year. And then, of course, we're reducing the size and changing, the flow and all of those things we need to do to provide proper distancing and protection for everybody. We'll see if by May we have a whole lot more people vaccinated, and maybe even then, by then it'll be a different situation, but we're preparing as though it were today. But we'll talk about the past festivals, because this year we don't have the experience yet of what's going on. And the festival is 25 years old. It started here on our campus. It began as a showcase for our students to show off what they're learning, working with area chefs, and also in partnership with Southern Wine and Spirits, now Southern Glazers, as a major partner. It actually shifted from the food emphasis to the wine emphasis. So it's a wine and food festival. We put the wine first, but lots of food. We have a partnership with the Food Network and Cooking Channel. So we usually have an amazing array of talent here from all the different shows that you may be familiar with on those channels. So that said, with so many celebrity chefs and catering companies and hospitality companies on site, they're all competing for the attention of the foodie, the attendee. We'll have up 70, 75,000 sometimes attendees at the 4-day festival on South Beach, Miami. It's also in a number of other venues around South Florida. It's even in Broward and West Palm Beach County. But the majority of the events are in South Beach. And the biggest ones are on the beach. So at those big events, which I focus on for food recovery, we typically have about 4,000 people in attendance at the evening events, up to 7,500 at the daytime Grand Tasting Village. And as you can imagine, with so many companies and so many chefs on site, they're all producing what they're known for, what they're best at, or something new that they want the public to learn about. And so they will produce in quantities to make sure that every festival goer is going to be satisfied. So that gives us a great opportunity to swoop in and recover everything that's left over at the end of the event. So we learned from almost 15 years ago now, we had a weather event that rained out one of these large evening events, and we had an enormous amount of food left over, no guests, and preparations for 4,000 people. So we had a lot of food. And from that experience, then we learned year by year that we needed to be prepared for such things to happen, and that even without inclement weather, we were going to have food left over, and something needed to be done with it, make sure it doesn't go through the waste stream. So we've over the years gotten better at it, and we've put together a team of volunteers, students from my class, students from dietetics and nutrition classes, other hospitality classes, social work students. We all gather on each of those days, go through a briefing, and at the end of each event, whenever if it ends at 10 p.m., we're basically ready at 9:30, waiting for the event manager to say, "Okay, time to go in, collect everything you can." We'll have a refrigerated truck on site right next to the service entrance, and we'll have usually a couple of flatbed golf carts to go in with our teams and recover everything as quickly as possible and get it under refrigeration as quickly as possible.
That sounds like an enormous undertaking. Tell us about what goes into the pre-planning stage when you start to work with the event organizers and volunteers, and tell us how that works.
Sure. So typically we start organizing about 3 months before, and that's exactly what's happening now. We're in February now, just starting to prepare for the event in May. Of course, the event itself is on a 12-month cycle, so they're planning from the day after we close last year's event. We're planning for this year's event, but my focus is about 3 months prior. So I get in touch with the different event managers. That's what I just did just before coming on this with the Grand Tasting Village. I'll be meeting with the event managers for the other events that I mentioned, and finding out changes from last year, whatever we need to talk about, and that gives me a good idea of how to prepare and start organizing teams. So I'll go to classrooms. I'll put out information to the different faculty members to announce in their classrooms, and then certain specific classes, I'll go and do a presentation, and I'll talk about food waste in general and why it's important to reduce food waste, what it does to the generation of greenhouse gases, what it does to our landfills, how it connects all the way through the sea level rise. And on occasion, I'll be invited for a 1-hour guest lecture. We'll really get into it. And students are very, very interested in these subjects. This is their future. They're studying hospitality or dietetics and nutrition or social work. They want to be involved in these things. They know it's going to be important for going forward in their careers. So I have no trouble getting the attention of any number of students, and usually my teams fill up very quickly, and I have people calling me saying, "Can't you get me in? Can't you get me in? I want to be part of this." So it's become a known thing for our festival, and it's spilled out into other festivals now. We've done the Seed Festival, the Vegan Dale Festival. We've done the country music on the beach in Fort Lauderdale. We've done. We were getting ready for Ultra last year before that one got canceled for COVID. And I heard just recently it's been canceled again for this year. So we'll get to Ultra next year whenever they get going again. But yeah, it's festivals, large scale events. You must have those quantities of food ready to go in place. And if everybody shows up and everybody hits every booth, you won't have a whole lot of food left over, and that's good for our environment. We don't have much to deal with, but we need to be prepared. We know that typically that's not the case. There's going to be food left over somewhere, and we just need to be in place with a team with the right equipment and ready to recover that and know where to take it immediately from there so that it gets reused.
Well, talk to us a little bit about those logistics. Once your volunteers swoop in and start gathering up the food and putting it in the aluminum pans, getting ready for transport, where does it go from there? And if it's late at night, what happens then?
Sure. So with this festival, we work with both Feeding South Florida, the regional food bank, and with Miami Rescue Mission, which is the largest homeless shelter in the area. They serve well, in normal times, pre-COVID, they would serve as many as 1,500 meals a day at their facility. They also have a Broward facility where they serve an additional number of meals. So they're serving in excess of 2,000 meals a day between their two facilities. They have a large need for food donations, and they have an ability to turn around those kind of donations and turn them into nourishing meals for the homeless populations of those two counties in very quick order. So typically what we'll do is for the evening events, if they end at 10 p.m., as I mentioned earlier, 9:30, we'll be ready to go in. We'll go in as soon after that 10 o'clock bell as the event manager feels is appropriate. We'll be done probably by midnight, 11:30, sometimes midnight, depending on how much food we're recovering. That food's going directly into a refrigerated truck that's already starting to chill it down. So we, according to food handling procedures, we have about a 2-hour window where we need to get that under refrigeration, and it's usually within an hour that we get it into the refrigeration. So we're even ahead of the game there. That's one of the tricks that you have to know if you're organizing events is you can't leave it sitting around and pick it up tomorrow unless you have refrigeration on site. So we'll get that truck loaded. It's typically a truck from one of the partners, so Miami Rescue or the Food Bank, with our volunteers, we'll get it loaded, and then with their driver and some of their volunteers, in both cases, they'll get those back to their facilities. So if we're closing that truck around 11:30 p.m., it's back at the rescue mission about midnight. It's going from refrigerated truck into their walk-in refrigeration units there, 12:30 or something like that, between midnight and 1 a.m. Then what happens about 5 in the morning, their chef comes in, opens it up and says, let me see what I got to work with today. So if it's Thursday night, we'd have the Italian night. If it's Friday night, it's burger bash and so forth. So if the chef comes in Friday at 5 in the morning, he's looking at typically a lot of pasta, a lot of sauces, a lot of garlic bread, a lot of salads, Parmesan cheeses, and anything you can imagine that was being served the night before. And he's turning that into 300 or 400 meals for lunch, and then another 600 or 700 meals for dinner. And if there's more food than is necessary for those meals, they'll store it. They might freeze some of it. They might ship some of it to their facility in Broward County, where they can also do a similar operation.
One of the things I'm curious about is when you were first getting started with these various events, did they come to you or did they reach out to find out about this, or did you go to them and say, let us rescue your food?
Well, so great question. I'm not in the business of food rescue. I usually react to them, but sometimes I'll go to industry events like Focus Miami or Meeting Professionals International, or the Sustainable Events Network meetings and things like that. And I'll be invited to talk on the subject, and then often I'll hear from an event planner after that saying, I've got an event in May, or I've got an event in July. Do you think that's something that could be done with that? And then I'll work with them and we'll organize. And in some cases, it's small enough that they can do it themselves and give them some guidance. And in other cases, I'll recruit a team of students and we'll come in and help make that happen. So that's typically how it works. And every case is a different case. But I mean, we enjoy doing it. My students get great experience out of it. They're enthusiastic about it. I enjoy doing it, and it's just important for our industry to be proactive on this point. It's very important to give back. Imagine the number of meals that we're serving. We'll serve after the South Beach Festival, when all is added up, we'll probably have contributed to about 25,000 meals for the homeless. I mean, that's a lot of food, and those are resources that nonprofit homeless shelter that relies 100% on donations doesn't have to find. So we've helped save them a week or two of food supply budget. That's very, very important. That budget that they might have spent on food can be turned around and maybe they can hire one more social worker or another staff member of some sort, or help improve their facilities in some way. It's interesting too that sometimes the shelter will get equipment donations after a festival. You'll have either an equipment, someone who makes grills might have them on display and say, we don't want to ship that display all the way back to the factory. It's been out on the floor. It might have gotten a scratch or a ding or two from customers, rubbing up against it. We'll just donate it, and we don't have to ship it back. And do you know where we could donate it? I said, do I ever? They could absolutely use that at either that facility or one of their others, or any number of agencies here in South Florida. And we'll do this work sometimes in Central Florida too. We've even done some things out in Las Vegas in the hospitality industry too. But typically we're right here in South Florida.
One of the things I'd like for you to address that many people are fearful of donating food because of liability. Somebody gets sick and they sue. And I know there's a federal and a state law in here in Florida. So talk to us about that and how you allay those concerns.
This is very, very important. I'm glad you brought it up. There have been state laws for a long time regulating donation of food, and some of them better than others. And in 1996, the federal government decided that a national law was needed as an umbrella to try and create some consistency across the board and encourage the act of food donation. So in fact, if you follow the rules, you're not going to run any risk of liability whatsoever. These laws, the federal and the state law here is called the Jack Davis Lend a Helping Hand Act, I believe it's called, from 2008 here in Florida. And each state has its own. But for Florida, you have the federal overarching law protecting against liability. It specifically discusses that the donor or donating organization shall not be held liable once they've turned over in good faith. And this is the key term, in good faith, that they're turning over a wholesome product, right? So you, as the food and beverage director or event manager or catering director or what executive chef, whatever your role is, you know that food to be wholesome. In other words, it's been under your care. It's not been sitting out for overnight, non-refrigerated, and you happen to donate the next morning. So as long as you're working with food professionals who are trained in serve-safe procedures, you have to do that for all your local county and municipal food safety laws anyway. If you're going to operate any type of food business, you're already doing those things. So it's just to have the care that's being carried out in any event situation, and that law will protect you all the way. Once you've donated that food to another organization, it's now up to them to make sure that they carry on with their procedures. And so that's why I always look to a shelter or a food pantry or another organization, a food bank that has that certification that they're accustomed to doing that. They're very comfortable with receiving that food. They know immediately what they have to do to keep it wholesome.
The federal law is called, for those who are interested in looking into that, is the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Food Act, or Food Act, I believe it is.
Yeah.
And one of the things I wanted to mention, you may already be aware of this, is the University of Arkansas did a study, and there were 0 lawsuits filed since the inception of the federal law. So that should allay some concerns as well.
That's correct. To my knowledge, and you have to, if you're a lawyer, you have to check every day the records. But to my knowledge, and I do have a law professor here that does look at these things for me, there has never been a case brought that has gone through the system. And so that means it's the law of the land. It's what we call settled law. And if you have a legal department that is questioning what the heck are you doing, you can point immediately to those laws, and you can point to the fact that it is settled law, or it's the law of the land. It's not been challenged. It's accepted. Because you can have a new law that's going to get all kinds of challenges, and then you don't know where it's going. But this is an important point for your legal department.
Wonderful. This has been great information, John. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about all of your successes. Congratulations on those.
Pleasure.
And pardon me?
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. So this has been Dr. John Buschman, Florida International University. And what I did not mention at the introduction is it's the Chaplin School of Hospitality and Tourism Management. That's where he gets all those volunteers from those classes. So thank you again, John, and take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us today on the Sustainable Hospitality Podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe. And if you'd like a free consultation on becoming a much greener hotel, please visit us at sustainablehospitalitypodcast.com.